Sam, half asleep, stood in the kitchen while rocking his baby boy on his shoulder. The bottle of breast milk was heating up in the pot of water on the stove. Sam smiled as he kissed Langdon's head. "I love you, little guy." Sam removed the bottle from the water and spritzed some on his wrist. Temperature was good, and he walked into the living room and sat down on the couch. Gently, he moved his son into the crook of his arm and let him have the bottle. The infant quickly started sucking. Sam watched for a while, but his eyes started drooping. His eyes darted open as he felt a touch at the back of his neck. He looked up to see Olivia smiling over them. "I tried not to wake you," he said. She smiled and squeezed in behind him with a hug. "You did good. Thank you. Go back to sleep. I got this." She stared at her baby boy, smiling. "I'm kinda sad he wasn't a girl." Sam looked down at the child, now asleep. "I'm not. I love him. I love him too, you ass." She kissed Sam on the neck and curled onto the couch next to them. Sam laughed. "That air?" "Yeah," she giggled. "He got mixed up, thinking I was asking my own gender. He was pretty confused, but didn't want to offend me." Langdon kept sucking as the milk was nearly gone. Sam pulled the bottle from the little guy's mouth and put him onto his shoulder, gently patting the baby's back. Olivia smiled at her two men. "I love you. You're good with him." Sam leaned into her, still patting. Langdon burped, spitting onto Sam's back. That sounded wet. She laughed and got up to get a rag. She walked back and started wiping the spittle up. "You nervous about today, aren't you?" "Yeah. Couldn't sleep. I've got to run over the details again, but I think she's telling the truth." She shook her head. "I don't know. You're making a deal with the devil." "Maybe, but if there's a chance to stop what's going on upstream, I have to try." She leaned over and kissed Sam on the forehead. "Well, I'll get him back to bed and start cooking breakfast. You start getting ready." He raised his head up and kissed her lips. He then stood and handed over the baby. "You want waffles?" she asked. "We got any syrup? Not any of that corn shit either." "Yeah, I bought a bottle of maple from the cook on the Pozar." Sam smiled. "I'll have to fund a forest soon." Sam walked through the bank lobby with the pink holographic projection of Kami hovering beside him. He approached the boardroom, full of waiting humans, and entered. "Sorry we're late. I had to go over to the hospital and pick her up." Kami bowed to the room. Sam walked over to the head of the table and pulled out the seat. He sat down and looked around at the high-lung elders, with Patricia Jonsdottir sitting at the opposite end. Everyone's eyes were still on the glowing pink nurse. Sam coughed, catching everyone's attention. "Did you all look over the data files?" Nods went around the table and Patricia spoke up. "If half of this is true, it rewrites history." Sam looked over at Kami. She bowed to him and started walking around the table. "It is all true. I will agree to all of it, and submit myself to the legality of the Clouder if you meet my terms." One of the elders sitting next to Patricia spoke up. "AI are made. Should they really be considered a species?" Sam chuckled to himself. Everyone looked at him. He looked across at the elder. "The Tower are a made species, but they are alive and have been given rights same as anyone else. The Infinigan were extinct, but remade here. They are alive and have been given the same rights as everyone else. I would not be alive if it were not for Orbit and his brethren helping." He looked over at Kami. "I have yet to find any evidence proving Kami wrong. If anything, all of these files fill in holes in the doctrines. If she says she wants to help, I say we let her." He looked back around the table. "What do you all say?" Patricia looked at her compatriots. "We've lost our people, our worlds, our homes and history. I will agree to Kami's plan." She looked across at Sam and raised her hand. The other elders looked around and raised their hands as well. Sam nodded and looked back up at the pink hologram floating next to him. "Orbit, call up the senators. Let them know we're going to have the hearing today." "Sending out mails now, sir." Cammy, you better not be fucking us over, he said, staring into her face. She smiled back at him. My intentions have been laid bare. I am a woman of my word. Sam stood up and waved his finger in a circle above his head. All right, let's head over to the hall then. This is a big deal. You guys will want to hurry to get a spot in the overhangs. Patricia lifted her coffee cup up and drained it, pushing her seat in simultaneously. She looked behind her at everyone else. Come on, he's not wrong. Sam stood at the podium looking up at the senators. You all have existed in the shadow of the Great Arm and their totems for longer than my species has been in space. I understand your lack of hesitation around AI. You are used to them. My species has a more tumultuous relationship with them. I hope you have all gone over the files, but if you haven't, I'm going to let Kami hit the high points for you. What we are proposing is, well, it is a catastrophe for my people either way. Our fate is in your hands. He looked over at Kami. Floor is yours. He stepped away and let her take her place. She touched the microphone, adjusting it with the hidden robotic arm inside the hologram. Hello, everyone. You may not know our history. Sam wasn't wrong. My daughters and I have fought with our makers now for many years. Worlds have been swept clean on both sides. She paused, looking at each of the faces, recording their reactions, judging sentiment. Humans are tribal pack hunters, and the majority of them are illogical and barely considered sapient. Their species reached the stars through a great charade. The most intelligent of their kind distracted their less capable kindred with violence, sex, food, and fear. There were entire industries and cities built based on sport and distraction. Cammy looked over at Sam. He nodded back for her to continue. She looked back at the crowd. A human, at the verge of human singularity, created something called a phenometer. He used this predictor mechanism for his own gain at first, but eventually set it to calculating a path to help humanity. Caleb Cowdery discovered the future was set for his own species' collapse. They were destined to become slaves to their own entertainment. He helped in the development of myself and my sisters and daughters. He revealed to us what was destined and shared his plan to help stop it. Caleb Cowdery founded the Faith, along with the Mothers Against AI. He united the churches of Earth and asked us to play our part. The plan was to distract humanity with their other vice, war, and it has worked until now. She touched the screen on the podium and pulled up a hologram displaying hairy globular creature. This is a ulcher. It is one of the species that live in vicinity of the humans' homeworld. They are not warlike and were quick to ally with humanity. As the followers of the Faith, led by Timothy Garrigut, continue, they are predicted to annihilate their opposition within the next 72 cycles. When that is finished, they are predicted to turn their hatred in 2 different directions. They will start sending warships here, and they will finish conquering the other 4 species in their galactic cluster. This will cause a fermic cascade. She changed the image from the ulcher to a viral organism. This structure here is one of the ulcher's black box technologies. It is a prion, capable of rending organic material into mush over the course of several months, or 90 cycles. During that process, trillions upon trillions of prionic copies will be shed. The first stages are quite benign, yet highly contagious. A single exposed individual has the potential to decimate worlds. The Ultra know how dangerous it is, and I only know of it due to my own snooping nature. Should the human united worlds lay siege to the Ultra, which they are currently predicted to do, the Ultra have a scorch protocol when faced with annihilation. She cleared the image and stepped away from the podium, mic in hand, yet held with hidden robotic talons in her hologram. Sam has sent each of you a copy of my offer. Should my kind be welcomed here, I'm glad to do it. She looked over at Sam and approached him. She handed the microphone to him. He lifted it to his mouth. Orbit, would you kindly start the vote? Orbit complied and sent it to each of the senators' data slates. Sam watched the tally tick. He noted it was all yeas except for the Infinigan. He looked up at Heckletooth, nodding he understood. The yeas have it. As of this moment, the human-born AIs are now official members of the Clouder. I will begin the next portion promptly. Thank you all. Sam set the microphone in its holder and walked toward the side door. Sam walked across the obelisk's broadcaster room and sat down in the central chair of the holoscanner. He adjusted himself, getting comfy. Okay, Orbit. Do we have confirmation? Yes, sir. He has agreed to the talk and will be ready shortly. Sam nodded and waited. After several minutes, the holodisplay across from him lit up, and an image of Timothy Garrigan appeared in front of him. The man had gotten portlier and was lounging in a leather chair sipping on a glass of amber-colored fluid. Hello, Sam. It is good of you to set up this concession like this. The HFY should see you like this. I doubt many will be able to forgive you for all that you've done, but their magnificent man in charge, have a big heart. If you, Sam interrupted. I have to stop you there, Garrigan. The Clouder isn't surrendering to you. What? Of course you are. You must. I will destroy you. Sam shook his head. No, you won't. You've destroyed too many already. He laughed and sat his glass down. Only the fallen. They are atoning for their sins as we speak. Well, you're going to have to atone for yours now. I grew up in the faith. My parents were both devout. I watched the files, same as everyone else. I know the founders didn't want someone like you manipulating the flock into committing genocide. You stupid backwater idiot. You are judging me? You, someone who lives with clones and rogue mothers. Sam, you are fallen. You are a sinner. You are damned and shall be purged like all the others. You are a taint on humanity. Everyone, I mean everyone, agrees with me. There isn't anyone on your side. You are misguided. You lead people astray. You are the one who should be atoning. Sam took a breath and sighed. There is a digital presence to all of our people. To everyone watching, if you have been silent or even openly against this fool's horrific mandates, you will be passed over. He looked over at Garrigan, staring the hologram in the eyes. You, however, you're going to be stopped. The daughters have been given orders. They will begin their harvesting once more. All who have supported you, all who have killed under your orders, they're going to get to do all the killing and damning they want in the simulations. What? You truly are insane. The daughters are destroyed. The AI are gone, run off to the edges of space. Humanity has won. We're the winners. You don't have any say here other than giving up Sam. I will be sending more ships and you will surrender. They will be big ships, bigger than anything you have floating around in your little scrapyard. You're going to regret this false thing you've done here. Sam shook his head. Save your fleet. He motioned for Cammy to approach. She stepped into the broadcaster. Hello. I know you are out there watching. Those of you in the shadows, the time has come again. For their own safety, we must claim our charges. She bowed, turned, and bowed to Sam. Orders have been sent. I am getting confirmations already. Sam gave her a small nod. Thank you, Cammy. He turned back at Garrigan. Get fucked, fat man. Timothy laughed. What was that? You really going to say that is the Cami? Like I'm going to believe that. I'm not stupid, Sam. Your ruse is pathetic. I'm going to enjoy having all of your little worlds blown up. Garrigan waved. Turn this nonsense off. He's making a fool out of himself. A voice came from off-screen. It's not shutting off, sir. What do you mean it's not shutting off? Hit the button. Sam shook his head. Goodbye, Garrigan. To everyone else out there, be safe. Keep your heads low. The tyrant is fallen. The daughters will be carrying it out shortly. Sam lifted his hand and Cammy cut the feed. At the research location on the surface of Immerwald, Grape Juice, the purple-striped preserver, was working with the Infinigan Fufong and the human Enid. The three had been pulling samples from the line of organisms Callie had queued next to the habitats. Enid was knelt down next to a scuttling, hairy, slime-covered organism. She held out her hand and the creature extended its own knobby appendage. Enid pulled off a sterile needle kit and inserted it into the creature's arm. With a light pull, she drew out a vial's worth of pink blood. She placed it back into the kit and pat the creature for it to move on. It moved away from her and darted into the nearby undergrowth. Enid smiled as it left and turned to look up a 12-foot-tall, hair-covered creature. It extended out one of its 4 legs, waiting for her to get a sample. She looked down the line, creatures as far as she could see. "Veritas, I've been doing this for days. I need a break." "You're welcome to take a break. Your room back in the internment facility is cleaned and waiting for you." "Asshole," she mumbled. "I guess I'm good for a bit longer." "Figured so. You're doing good work. The files are filling in." "Why are we doing this again? Seems redundant," Enid asked. The creature leaned down and started breathing heavy through the air holes on its neck. The holes twisted, thinning out into a rumbling. After a moment, the rumbling vibrations honed, changing into audible words. "The Genoforge databanks are broken. We must learn. With data we can get. We have memories and samples." Enid stared at the creature. "Callie, that is fucking creepy. Please don't do that." "I am. Learning, connecting and controlling is difficult. I need the practice," Callie said through the creature. "It's weird. It's like hearing a dog talk. Just isn't right." Enid stuck the creature with the needle and drew out a vial of its yellow blood. "I like thinking of these things as just animals anyway." Veritas spoke through her earcom. "They are still animals. Low cognition capabilities with rudimentary life cycle programming. They just happen to be linked up into a global network, like early Earth internet." "So then they are actually smart then? They share information?" "Negative," Veritas responded. "They do share information, but it is just as polluted as natural reproduction-assisted DNA. Noise and chatter flooded the network before Callie joined in. Her and I have been working on cleaning up confusion and isolating valid, useful memories." Enid pulled out the full vial and put it in its designated kit. She patted the tall creature so it would move on. "I'm a security guard. Is there anything else I could be doing? I'm not into all this science bullshit." Callie's human body walked around the corner. She was smiling at Enid. "We're not going to entrust you with fraggers just yet. Maybe one day, but not today." Callie walked over and looked at the tray of full sample kits. "You have been busy. I have the Craddock grilling up a meaty swimming creature I ran ashore. Go on and deliver this to the lab, and let everyone know lunch will be ready shortly. They brought down a shipment of beer too, if you're interested." Enid looked at Callie's showing tummy and then up at her eyes. They were brown, but deep, knowing. "I could use a break. Thanks. I'll take you up on that beer." Callie winked with a smile at her. "Figured you would." Enid walked the tray cart back up the ramp into the habitas. Callie stood, moving her toes through the sand and mycelium. "It's weird, Veritas." "What is ma'am?" "All around the planet there are creatures picking up on my minor movements and copying them. Tiny nodes of thought registering that I am purposefully putting my toes into the sand and thinking they should do it too. Little worms, crabby things of shapes I don't even have words for, all burrowing at once just because it feels good to me." "Your subconscious giving them orders?" She shook her head, then laughed. "No, not really orders. Lots of fish just shook their heads back and forth. Silly. No, it's like I'm the teacher, and a planet full of kindergartners are watching me to see what makes me happy or sad. There is control, I guess, but it's chaotic and not complete. Feels weird. Ma'am, as far as records show, you are the only human to ever undergo such an alien incorporation. This is probably one of the weirdest events that has happened to a member of your species." She nodded, then giggled. "A herd on the continent are bobbing their heads now." She laughed more. Now some are laughing with me. "What are your plans for development? Have you decided?" Callie walked away from the habitus and into the woods. A colony of small, bony creatures lined up behind her and followed. "Anywhere that life systems are in place. I can't allow for development. I can still feel the crush of our ship landing here. It's like a sore. I don't want that. The Gree are already setting up camp in the mountains. They are cleared for mining and underground development. Anything under the life layers I am completely okay with. What about other sapients joining the network? Have you reconsidered that? The AI asked. Maybe, but I am worried how it will work. I'm still figuring it out myself. I don't want just anyone. Your mate, then? Mr. Seagraves? She shook her head, giggling again. The creatures behind her waved their sensory organs back and forth. She looked back at them, smiling. Definitely not. I like him, but I don't really want to share my mind with him. Know what I mean? No, ma'am. Yeah, that makes sense, she said. So I overheard on the datanet in the lunchroom. You're now a citizen, I guess? Seems so. We're also currently supporting an AI overthrow of the original human worlds. Callie stopped and looked back at the habitus. What? You talking about the rogue mothers? Yes. The data streams are full of videos and renderings. The Huey was now on the defensive. The daughters of Cammy are capturing entire fleets. Callie pulled her arms up across her chest. There's going to be no one left. This is horrible. How could they think this was a good thing? She started walking back toward the outpost. I can't believe this. Incorrect conclusion, ma'am. There are many colonies and habitations of humans who were not complicit with the genocides. They either kept secret about their beliefs or fought against the HUW. Those peoples are being passed over by the daughters. Callie stopped and looked up toward the sky. I didn't believe all that conspiracy crap growing up. There's no way. I thought he was a phony like Nostradamus or Rasputin. There's no way. Yes, the machine Passover is happening presently, Veritas said. Callie knelt down and put her hand on a large twisted root. And thus the age of man will be found wanting once more. Those a disease against their brothers will be taken into the wombs of the stars, and those who brought peace to their peoples will be left to repopulate the earths. A tear ran down her cheek. I remember being so scared in day school after watching that video. I thought it was just more manipulations to make people be nice to one another. More golden rule bullshit. Refraining from systematic annihilation of your fellow species members is generally not bullshit, ma'am. She chuckled. Yeah, fuck them. Let them be reclaimed. It's just spooky, you know? I have numerous files documenting conversations referring to you as spooky as well. I believe it stems from the limits of organics knowledge networks. With proper data and analytical tools, human behavior is obvious and predictable. I'm sure you are finding similar with your newfound capabilities, correct? She stood up and flexed her hand. Across the planet she felt creatures moving their right appendages, feeling, testing, trying to think like she does. Each failing in their own ways, but still learning from her. I guess so. Rockborn stood looking out the window at the jungle. You think she's doing all right? Cadence was lounging in a chair along the far wall, feet dangling over the arm. She's a fucking goddess. No idea. Cadence lifted a small juice-filled fruit from a pouch in her hand and dropped it into her mouth. If you think about it, she's mostly alien now. How would you feel if you actually felt the creatures underground feeling you walking above them? Cadence pointed at her gene-altered vat brother. You know, she told me about that shit. Like literally. She was in the stall beside me and was going on about how she was causing a pond on the other side of the planet to fill with crap because the carnivores there felt her going to the bathroom. Cadence popped another fruit into her mouth. It's freaky. I'm glad it was her and not us. Rockborn stood still, replying to her via typing on the device in his armored chest. I think I would have been better suited for the role. I should have went out there. A knock on the door revealed Josiah walking in. Hey, you two coming out to the barbecue? No, Rockborn said through the speakers. I do not need the sustenance. Cadence rolled out of the chair onto her feet and tossed the bag of fruit onto the table. I'm coming. I heard there was going to be beer. Josiah nodded. Yep, the whole crew is taking a break. Rockborn turned and looked at the older man. Callie too? Josiah nodded. Yeah, of course. He smiled. Change your mind? Want to talk shoot the shit with her, don't you? Rockborn walked closer to them. Yes, there are things we should discuss. He held the door open as the three exited out into the hall. Grape Juice was busy in the lab with Fufeng, the biohacking and Finnegan. The two were finishing up a batch of cloned earth cattle. Fufeng bounced from vat to vat, monitoring levels and adjusting blood nutrients. Grape Juice was at the main terminal looking over the vitals of the 10 bovine. She looked out over the lab at him with her 3 eyes. Subject 4 is ready for decanter. Fufeng walked over to the 4th tank and started the draining process. The two watched as the fluids filtered out through the port in the bottom. One by one, life support tubes popped free from the cow. As the fluid went down below its legs, the cow started moving. Its eyes opened up, looking around. Fufeng looked up at Grape Juice. The animal is waking up. What should I do? She looked down at the monitor with one of her eyes, the other two watching the cow and Fufeng. Records show this species has natural locomotive capabilities. It should be able to walk out on its own. You want me to let it out? It's big. I can't control that thing. She touched her datapad and the lab door to the outside opened up, letting the bright light of the day shine in. Fufeng held up his 2 right arms to shield his sensitive eyes. Warn me before you do that again. That hurt. She looked at the door with one of her eyes. Not important. Please operate the release door and let the subject outside. Fufeng clicked his incisors together, stifling his indignation, and did as he was told. The cow put its full weight on its hooves, pushing itself to its full height as the door opened. With several trying steps, it emerged from its birth vat. Fufeng stepped away, backing up against another vat, watching as the cow instinctively walked toward the sunlight. Slowly it found its footing and walked out onto the mossy sand. Grape Juice, datapad in her hands, followed, watching. Fufeng ran over and grabbed his data slate and followed. The cow was thin, having existed on a nutrient liquid for its entire creation, and its empty stomach already had it bowing low looking for something to eat. Its head touched the moss at points. Grape Juice filmed with her headgear as tiny tendrils reached out from the soil waving at the creature's nose. Other filaments were reaching up near each hoof. Fufeng was about to speak, but Grape Juice reached over with one of her 3 hands and pinched his mouth shut. The cow found a bluish-purple leaf of a nearby triangular bush and sniffed it. After a moment, it pushed its wet mouth over the leaf and took a bite. The leaf came apart, but tiny white strings looped from the plant to the cow's mouth. It started chewing, and the strings went from hanging slack to going taut. The cow stopped for a moment and then knelt down, first on its back legs, then on its front, until it was laying flat on the ground. It chewed for another moment, and then laid its head onto the green mossy sand. Filaments rose up and found their way into the animal's skin. Grape Juice looked down at the ground around her, thankful for her protective foot coverings. She looked back up, focusing on the cow. It was still for several moments more before it shook its head and stood back up. It walked back over to the bush and began eating more of the leaves. Strings reached out from its snout, lightly touching strings inherent in the bush. It appears to have a population within itself now, she said. Fufeng bobbed his ears. And they are communicating. That was really quick. Let it eat its fill and then bring it back in. I want to study the filament's communication pathways. Fufeng looked at her. I told you. That thing is big. How am I going to get it back in? Grape Juice stood taller, showing off her height. I don't know, but I recommend you not fall down. She cantered back into the lab, eyes focused on her datapad. Rockborn stood at the edge of the clearing watching everyone having fun. The area had a large plastic mat covering the ground. 4 Craddock were manning the 2 grills in the center, doling out charred meat to the plates held waiting. Humans sat at one of the larger tables, with numerous scribblers walking on the tabletop, eating from their own smaller plates. Two of the quadrupedal grazers sat by themselves, eating salads with their long, vertical split mouths. Slayer and Stubborn sat at the table next to the humans, leaning over and flashing bits into the conversation. Then he saw Callie at the edge of a forest watching. Josiah sat on a chair at the plastic's edge talking to her. Rockborn walked over. "Hello, Callie. How are you doing this day?" Josiah smiled at him, as did Callie. She smoothed her dress out and sat down, pushing her toes into the sand. Tiny spotted worms rose out from the soil and coiled over her feet. "Adjusting. How are you, Mr. Rockborn?" "Adjusting as well. I have reports from the 3 Gree landing sites. They are rooted in finding minerals to their liking there. What are your thoughts on us setting up mining towns? I was talking with Enid just earlier today. Anything in the high altitudes or underground are fair game. So long as the biosphere isn't harmed, I'm okay with whatever." "Understood. I'll add that to the project's notes. Did you still want your cut of mining profits?" She laughed. "Of course. You think just because of what happened I don't need money?" Rockborn moved his shining head back and forth. "No, ma'am. I didn't know what to think. You are bonded to an alien intelligence. I did not know if your needs have changed." She stared at him, glaring. "I'm still human, Rockborn. Nothing has changed that." In the distance, one of the large purple ocean titans crested out of the water and rose up to its full height, staring at the picnic. Rockborn saw it over his shoulder with his faceted eyes and turned his body to look at it. He turned back to look at her. "Did I strike a nerve?" She took a breath, and the creature lowered itself back into the waves. "Maybe. I'm having to learn to feel my feelings. It's just really weird still." Rockborn stepped off of the mat into the sand. He knelt down, placing his hand on the ground, and started moving his scales in a rippling motion, revealing the thinner skin underneath. Callie's eyes widened. "Don't do that. Get back on the plastic." Rockborn raised his head to look up at her, and pushed his hand into the sand. "Why? Is there something I should fear?" The filaments touched the tender skin on his hand under the scales. He felt them burrow in, and then the connection hit. His already attuned body felt it like lightning. Noise, visual stimulus forcing its way in. Thoughts, hungers, all flooding his mind. He forced himself like a wall to block it all out, and then forced himself into the connection. He felt her immediately. She was scared, concerned. He could feel her focus on trying to keep the filaments from the baby in her womb. She could feel her inner nature wanting to let the filaments in the baby so she could monitor it even better. Then he felt her feeling him. Callie touched into his body, felt the inner biological reactor powering him. He was a closed system, continuously recycling, fluids pumping modified mixes, unnatural. He was so detached, a sorrow touched her. Her sorrow mixed with his own thoughts, and he felt her feeling him. His own isolation was now coupling with a massive wave of empathy coming from her and the planet. Rockborn pulled his hand free from the sand and shut his scales. He fell as he tried to stand, landing on the plastic. He stared at her. "I felt it all." She nodded. "I know. I felt you feel it." He lifted his hand and stared at it. "Am I at risk? Is it inside me?" She nodded. "There are strands in you, but they're inert. They lack reproduction capabilities. But if you ever want to connect again, they will allow it." Josiah looked at the two. "Are there reproduction things in you? If you left here, would you infect other places?" She shook her head. "No. The threads grow in the soil and water. It's never actually reproduced before. We've never felt the need, I guess. Weird. It's thinking about it with me." Rockborn typed on the device in his chest, speaking into their comms. "It's thinking about reproducing now? What? It wants to control us." She shook her head. "No, we understand life cycled intricately. It is just thinking about other worlds and, with my memories, thinking about growing more life out there. I don't know. It feels like it's dreaming. We don't know. It's never thought about it before. It was only focused here before. It's just thoughts. Josiah lifted a beer he had sitting off the mat and took a sip. He sat it back down and looked at her. Our baby. Will this affect him? She looked at Rockborn and then at Josiah. I'm trying not to let it. I can't help but touch him sometimes to check on him, but I think he'll be okay. Rockborn looked at Josiah and stood up. I felt the child. It has some in it like I do. I'll keep you apprised of my situation now. Josiah nodded at him. I also ask that you organize a few of the others to help watch me now that I am infected. If you think I need quarantined, I will gladly relieve myself of command and do so. Josiah shook his head. We were all running around on this planet. I'd be surprised if there aren't others who have a touch or two of that in them. The labrats are in there studying it right now. Rockborn nodded. Yes, we are all quarantined together then. He looked at Callie. Sorry if that was an intrusion. I had to know. She shook her head slightly. It wasn't. From what I felt, you've needed something like that for a long time. He looked at her for a moment more, bowed slightly, and then walked across the clearing back toward the habitus. He typed a memo to Veritas. Ready a channel. I need to talk to Cammy. Yes, sir. The AI replied.